If I think back to the day that after years of making the decision, I finally said, yes, absolutely, I'd say within 2 months I had started making the first moves to transition. So calling, because you have to get a letter from a psychologist and all that. So finding a like all those initial steps were begun within 2 months of waking up and having the decision firm in my brain. And in terms of explaining what it feels like, the best way I've been able to do that is through analogy. So there are two analogies that have seemed to help people understand. One of them is, say, if you're used to driving a small car, so imagine you have a Ford Festiva or something like that, or a little Toyota Echo, whatever, tiny, and you get, you know how it is, you drive, you feel like you're part of your car, right? It's an extension of you, and you get used to driving, and then one day you borrow somebody's pickup truck and all of a sudden you're in this big vehicle, and it takes a while until you get used to manipulating this larger vehicle that takes more room. It's a different process of turning a corner, parking, all these things, right? So your body is no longer in sync with the vehicle that you're driving. But usually that goes away after you've driven it maybe a few hours, right? If that feeling never went away, of you not being in sync with the vehicle that you're in, that's kind of stretched that out over a lifetime. It's not always being aware of this thing that you're driving and not being in sync with it. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is, those times a lot of people, they might, hang on to this pair of jeans that is just like a size too small. It still fits, they can still get into it, but they're like, I'm gonna lose that 10 pounds, it'll be okay, they'll fit again, and I'll keep wearing them, and but they're going to work or whatever, they're wearing these jeans and they can still function. It doesn't cut off their breath, but they're always aware. You're always aware of these jeans that are a bit too tight. So your brain always reminds you of this. It's another kind of way to think about it. It's like you're functional. Well, again, it depends on the individual, but for me, I was functional, but I would always be reminded of this thing that didn't quite fit. There are different kinds of trans people, right? So there are trans people who, so I'm in this box and I'm switching to this other box. I'm oversimplifying, right? But who identify strictly as female or male. I identify as in between. I don't identify within what we call the gender binary. I'm something else, and so I don't feel the need to change, beyond a certain point. I wanted a few changes, but I don't feel I need to kind of surgically modify my body to be who I am. I surround myself with very progressive people, so for the most part, I mean, it wasn't necessarily easy to get used to, say, using a different pronoun and name that they were used to, but once people realized I'm the same person, I'm really the same person, but happier, more confident, more me, and just my interactions with people actually got easier in that sense. Well, to a certain extent it does, because what society thinks can lead to concrete instances of discrimination. People can be denied housing, people can be denied employment, even trying to cross the border sometimes with paperwork that doesn't match who you are, especially into the US, it can be scary, and I'm one of the lucky ones. I've had issues at the border because of that, because of people kind of looking, going, what are you? But I'm white, and if I were a person of color, it would be even worse, because they're also so racist at the border. So there are all kinds of issues that kind of intertwine here, and different kinds of discrimination that people can face because of societal attitudes. I don't need a paper to tell me who I am. I don't need the government to tell me who I am. But because of the concrete ramifications that it can have, especially in terms of things like border crossing, so anybody who wants to travel out of the country, or even just you go to a medical clinic, and every time you go, because your paperwork doesn't necessarily match what your appearance is, you have to tell your life story to this receptionist. The person comes out and calls your name, and because they see, say, an F, they'll say Mrs. So-and-so, and then you get up and people are like, what? And so it's having to always deal with that on a regular basis. That can be highly problematic. So in that sense, I think it's important that the official recognition match people's needs.